There are many, many people who watch our content and then feel compelled to reach out to us about said content. Sometimes people want to complain about how we dress on camera, or the word choices, or the fact that both I and Kate Walton Elliott are British by birth and now live in the US and are both American citizens because we married Americans. Sometimes we get people complaining that we're too political because of our t-shirt choice, or our sarcasm and wit, or indeed the fact that we're willing to describe facts without fawning over certain people. Sometimes it's because we are the gay, and being gay or trans is enough to put them into a moral spin, and that means they just can't listen or watch us anymore because we're evil and we're going to the other place. Sometimes it's just because it's a Monday, but then again, I don't like Mondays. And sometimes you get people complaining about the fact that our comment section is a cesspool of horribleness because the mighty algorithm now gets upset if you ban people from commenting, and harassment apparently constitutes engagement. But as much as I'd like to never read another comment and dispatch the entire comment section and its soul-destroying putridity with the same ease as my BG3 crush Karlak dispatches her enemies, there are some really good comments well worth reading, so we keep reading them. Many of them are from you wonderful people, providing helps and tips and hints for other viewers to enjoy. Sometimes you want to give us some much-needed love. You guys rock. And sometimes you want us to answer a really simple question or two. And of the questions we get regularly, one of them revolves around used EV ownership. Specifically, which EVs we would recommend people buy on the used car market. Now, we've made plenty of content before about used EVs, and between the four of us at the channel and our respective partners, we have amassed quite a lot of experience buying used EVs and working on obscure random EVs that are no longer in production. And when someone looks for a used EV to buy, we tend to steer them towards one of a number of different models, with some of our favourites in the US being the Chevrolet Bolt EV and Kia e-Niro, the first due to its recent battery recall and subsequent battery warranty, and the second due to the fact that the e-Niro is one really solid, practical, dependable everyday driver. But today I'm going to follow a different path. We're going to look at which EV to buy if you are someone who wants to work on your own EV and save some moolah. Which EV should you get if you never want to visit a dealership for after sales or service? Which EV should you buy if you want to carry out aftermarket modifications? And which EV should you look to buy if you're looking for a low-cost daily driver with tons of parts availability and a huge number of active forums willing to give you all of the help you could possibly need? As far as we're concerned, there is but one real recommendation. You might not know this, but Kate Walton Elliott and I met through mutual friends and a youth support group, but we cemented our friendship over our love of Morris Minors and our willingness to get our hands dirty and work on our vehicles ourselves. Granted, it was way back in the early noughties and we were a lot younger than we are today, but we spent many an hour working on our respective cars, sometimes together, sometimes individually. We have collectively replaced leaf springs, engines, cooling systems and gearbox. We've replaced clutches, carried out regular services and done a diff change. We know how to use feeler gauges and we know what top dead centre is and how to use it as a reference. And in our time owning electric vehicles, we've also carried out our own maintenance. I've built my own plug-in Prius, made my own custom wiring loom for a battery management system when my first EV needed to go from lead acid to those newfangled lithium-ion battery packs. And Kate's in the middle of converting her Morris Minor Rebecca to electric. Yes, Kate is still working on Rebecca, although the project is now at a bit of a pause phase caused by politics, Kate's recent hospital trip, and the fact that converting a car to an electric vehicle is still kind of expensive. But the reality is that these days, thanks in part to us being incredibly busy making content for this channel, and the whole middle-aged thing. We tend not to work on our own vehicles as much as we once did. And while you might think that's because of the fact we now drive electric instead of internal combustion engine vehicles, it's not actually just that. It's just that we have relatively new vehicles that require not so much in the way of maintenance and for the most part are still covered by warranties. My F-150 Lightning is literally brand new. My wife's Chevrolet Bolt EV has a battery pack with an 8-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and Kate and her wife's respective Kia e-Niro and Kia Soul EV also have warranties for the stuff that is most likely to go wrong. We don't need to work on our own EVs. But that's not true if you're looking to get into the very early budget end of EV ownership and you are willing to trade money for sweat equity. And to that end, we have often heard from people who have plenty of automotive experience working on internal combustion engines over the years, may well have a reasonably equipped enthusiast shop in their home or barn on their property, and want to get behind the wheel for the first time of an EV. They may already have some computer skills and are likely familiar with automotive computer systems. They may even have a 4-post lift, and they want to know which of the lower cost EVs currently on the used car market should be their first purchase choice. And as I hinted earlier, there's just one clear winner, the Nissan LEAF, and of course I'm going to tell you why. First though, a little bit of a warning. If you are someone who is considering working on your own EV, even if you are an accomplished amateur ice wrench turner, please do yourself a solid and consider going on a basic training course, either online or via a local community college, so you can learn the very important basics of how to deal with the very dangerous high voltage battery packs and power electronics found in every EV. And if that's not possible, at an absolute bare minimum, you should watch the excellent series from Professor Don Kelly from the Weber Auto YouTube channel. That should be at the top of your list. And while I'm talking about this all, let's talk about additional tools that you'll also need to get to safely work on an EV. Things you should either invest in before you buy that older EV you intend on working on, or things that you are prepared to buy at some point in the future when you actually have an EV to work on. This list includes a proper set of high voltage insulating gloves with nice long sleeves. Don't just buy the ones designed for regular sparkies to use on household circuits. You need to get the ones that are rated for the kind of high voltage DC power that EV battery packs churn out before breakfast. You should also get a decent electric multimeter. Of course, you can cut corners on all of this by buying online from parts places like AliExpress, but honestly, you should always use a known, trusted good brand when it comes to meters, even if it's a second-hand unit, as you want to make sure that the meter you're using is actually reading accurately. And if you are in the camp that thinks all multimeters and electronics components are created equally, bless your cotton socks. Go watch Big Clive for a bit. I'll link to him below. I think that might change your mind. In addition to those two things, and assuming you already have some kind of vehicle lift, you'll also need to consider getting a nice, sturdy, wheeled table that will support a battery pack on, that you can move the battery pack around on. That's if you want to work on the battery pack, but given we're talking about a Nissan LEAF, is probably a likelihood, as well as the now obligatory additional tools that are required for any modern EV, like a computer and an OBD2 dongle that's compatible with Nissan's service software, or for regular maintenance tasks, a copy of Leaf Spy, and a suitable OBD2 dongle for your smartphone. Of course, I can go on. A decent oscilloscope and a current clamp are also very useful tools if you plan on regularly tinkering with your used EV. But if all of that doesn't sound too bad, let's look at why we think the Nissan LEAF is the EV for you. The most obvious answer is that a massive number of them have been made, both in terms of the first generation and the current generation. What's more, unlike, say, Tesla Model S, Model X or Model 3, which have had many versions of different internal components depending on exactly when they were made, there are only really a handful of different incremental changes made to the Leaf during its first generation production run, and even fewer changes made for its second generation. And for the most part, it is still possible to find all of the parts that will fit the Leaf without waiting for months. Next, the Leaf is a car that has the most comprehensive owner forums I've ever seen for any production EV. And I'm not just talking about fan forums, I'm talking about forums where people discuss intricate issues and faults, where people have figured out how to deal with the very strangest of bugs, and where people have been modifying EVs ever since they first rolled off the production line. Need an example? My very first Nissan LEAF had a design flaw in Gen 1 Leafs that meant you couldn't run the cabin fans without turning on either the heating or the air conditioning, which used a lot of power. And someone in the Nissan LEAF community figured out how to modify that circuit board to give cars the extra functionality. Thanks to some soldering from my friend John, I was able to get that modification done and installed it in my original Leaf, which, to my knowledge, is still out there, roaming the roads of the UK, having just rolled over its 13th birthday, with those modified controls still operating. Much in the same way that the second generation Toyota Prius grew a massive following of engineers, makers and enthusiasts, so too has the Nissan LEAF grown a community of people that are willing to add to and modify their Leafs to fit their daily needs. In the early days of the Nissan LEAF, someone figured out how to add extra onboard chargers to boost their car's charging speed from a level 2 charging station. Someone figured out how to add a range-extending supplemental battery pack in the boot. And someone figured out how to add a range-extending supplemental battery pack in the boot. And folks even figured out how to fit a full-size spare tyre underneath. This level of community knowledge and support means that you're not alone when working on a Nissan LEAF, and while factory manuals are there, if you're willing to pay to access them, there are a bunch of other, often free resources right there for you at a level that few other used EVs on the market today can match. Next, let's talk about upgradability. I think by now it's pretty much well known that if you're into used EVs, you're likely to also know that you can get an early Nissan LEAF and upgrade its battery pack to increase its range, improve its cell chemistry, or just give it a new lease of life. Save for the very last battery packs as found in the current longest range Nissan LEAF in production to this day, the battery pack casing for Nissan LEAFs are physically the same size externally, and if you're really determined to give that original Nissan LEAF a 60 plus kilowatt hour battery pack, it is more than possible if you're someone who has a little fabrication skills and is willing to make some modified battery pack mounting brackets. Internally, though, there are some differences between how different versions of the Nissan LEAF battery packs are laid out, and there's also some different hardware depending on the pack size you pick. There's also some pin-out differences between the various models of LEAF made to date, but the good news is there's an active group of people working on both commercial and open source projects that should make those battery swaps an easily achievable thing if you're someone with a modest amount of wrench turning ability, a decently equipped shop, and plenty of common sense. There are even rumours of specialists in multiple countries now working on completely brand new aftermarket battery pack options for Nissan LEAFs, although to be fair, if you're into DIY, I would personally recommend that you look first at the amazing work being done by Dala the Great, who is indeed great. Link to his Patreon below. As it happens, one of our lovely Discord forum members and longtime channel friend, Otmar Ebenhoek, recently helped a local LEAF owner in his area swap out the battery pack in their aging Nissan LEAF with a nearly new one from a salvaged Nissan LEAF. So join up with our Discord chat following the link below and you might find out more info on our Discord server. For wrench turners, there is a bunch of people who have been here before. There's a bunch of great forums and resources to allow you to diagnose and fix the various common issues that LEAFs have experienced over the years, and you can even upgrade them with minimal fuss to go further on a charge. How much do such upgrades and tweaks cost? Well, if you are an enthusiast with some existing automotive knowledge and you're willing to take your time, You can find salvaged Nissan LEAF battery packs fairly frequently on various auction sites and even purchase entire cars at salvage auctions. Sure, the cost to you may be something that requires you to save up some pennies first, but you're going to be saving far more money working on the car yourself compared to paying a dealership to do the work for you. And what's more, while we're sticking on the subject of battery packs, unlike most modern EVs, which have complicated cooling loops that require emptying when disconnecting the battery and then require complex filling and bleeding, often using specialist automaker-approved tools, the LEAF uses an air-cooled battery pack, which at the end of the day is a whole lot easier to work on as an enthusiast. I've seen early Nissan LEAFs advertised for sale on places like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist that have asking prices as low as $1,000, primarily because the original owner took the car to a dealership when the battery was needing to be replaced and was quoted tens of thousands of dollars for a replacement and thus decided against it. But if you can buy a salvage Nissan LEAF for half that price and you're left with a serviceable, usable car that you can work on, well, for some people, that would be a no-brainer. The Nissan LEAF, therefore, is our number one choice. Parts availability is easy, there are a huge number of upgrades, and you can even now get CHAdeMO to CCS adapters to allow you to charge a Nissan LEAF at a CCS Type 1 or Type 2 charging station, depending on where you live in the world, although those adapters are still very early days. And of course, alongside the Nissan LEAF, there's its sibling, the Nissan ENV200, which, while sold in fewer markets around the world, and has a little bit more complexity surrounding its battery pack because it does use a cooling loop of sorts, is still compatible with a huge number of the Nissan LEAF mods and upgrades because it's basically based on the same technology. But there is another EV I think is worth a mention here, the Mitsubishi i-MiEV. Granted though, it is a vehicle that is, for the more hardcore and knowledgeable DIY EV repairer, the sadists of the EV repair world. It too, like the LEAF, uses an air-cooled battery pack. And again, people are already working on ways to upgrade those battery packs for longer range, better charging, and so much more. But unlike the Nissan LEAF, which was made in reasonably large volumes around the world and for whom parts are still available, the Mitsubishi i-MiEV is now sadly into the territory of buy a second parts car to keep the first running territory, especially as it's slightly different in different markets. There's a Japanese version, a European version, and a North American version, and they're all different enough that you can't really easily swap parts. For some people, then, that is a problem. But again, if you're so inclined, you could end up with a very usable car. I've seen someone, our good friend Benjamin Nelson, figure out how to add a switch to his Mitsubishi i-MiEV so that he could use the car's onboard CHAdeMO port to pull battery voltage DC power out of the vehicle that he then used to run into an inverter to provide backup power to his home. Are there any other contenders in the EV world? I can't think of any, but hey, maybe I've missed one out that was an obvious one for you where you happen to live. So let me know your recommendations below. Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people that help make this channel possible by funding it through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and making sure we can be 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, $10.08 a year. A massive welcome to our newest supporters, Ralph Koenig, Mr. Eldritch, Dwayne Adiger, and Corey Singletray. To join our list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your week of fame. If If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll also find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. The address is listed below. And of course, if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store link in the down below as well. This month, we are celebrating Wrangling EV FUD with a fantastic t-shirt design by our in-house artist and animator Erin. Get yours today by heading to our Redbubble store. We've got some great content coming up, so make sure you'll subscribe on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we also think that this one is well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving!